Hello everyone, welcome back to another Lumley trading live stream. Now today market does open in about 10 seconds from now. We have a lot of big earnings coming out. So pre-market, the only name I was paying any attention to was KKR. So that's CPE firm. They didn't actually really move too much off their earnings, as you'll actually see now as the market's open. We basically stayed relatively flat. I mean, we've moved up 1% and a bit. However, we have moved and flipped above our anchored VWAP, so that's one thing to be paying attention to. If we come back to retest that, could be quite a bullish indication, and we could look to potentially play that long bias. The main earnings for today, though, are going to be the ones that are dropping after hours. So if we pull this up here, this is the earnings calendar. Again, some people will be paying attention to the Tyson. We'll pull up the chart in a sec. Wasn't really paying attention to any of these. I mean, Berkshire Hathaway will open up as well, but KKR was the main one I was watching, but we didn't get much of a move. But after hours is where the big moves are really going to be happening, or the bigger names. You got the Palantir, you got Lucid, you got Chgg, Paramount, and Beyond Meat, which are going to be the main ones I'm paying attention to for the after hours today. But really, this week overall should have some quite nice names. Obviously, we covered them what we have today. UPS is normally quite a nice mover, so is Rivian. Obviously, AMC can definitely be a big mover. You got UPST. This one is one that has been moving really strong recently. I think it's still holding around that $30 area. You also got Twilio, tends to be quite volatile off these earnings. Marathon can be, so we'll definitely be paying somewhat attention to that. And I think those, and then also MVAX, so Novax. They're going to be the key names for Tuesday. Going on to Wednesday, we've got Roblox, Disney, Sony. I don't actually really trade Sony, but a bigger name, so we'll definitely be paying attention though. Trade Desk can be quite a big mover as well. Wendy's. Sonos can actually sometimes move. I don't trade it all that much, but definitely something to be paying attention to. And Good RX, good names for the Wednesday. Going on to Thursday, we obviously got Alibaba, big mover or potentially big mover. Ralph Lauren, something I'm more just holding the long term, doesn't tend to have a massive move on earnings, but I like to be paying attention to it. After hours, really the only one is IONQ, would be the only one I'm paying attention to after hours that day. And then going on to Friday, we've got Air Canada. The main reason I like paying attention to this is how are we going to move the other airlines, how are we going to move UAL and Delta. And that's really the only name I'm paying attention to on Friday. So just wanted to quickly show you that what I'm paying attention to on the earnings calendar this week. So that's what we're paying attention to. Let me just quickly send out the stream into the Discord. And then we can run through some other things. Not too much news really came out this weekend, market-wise. So not too much I'm paying attention to from what's come out over the weekend. Let me just quickly grab the stream up as well so I can see the chat and everything. Also just noticing on the SPY as well, obviously we did get a bit of a gap up. We gapped up about 0.5% today. We are gapping into quite a key level, and that's going to be the anchored VWAP, obviously, which is basically that level we are testing right now. The level is at $449.40. So we'll see how we start reacting to this, but if we start breaking above it, we retest it as a support. Could definitely be quite a strong mover to the upside. So paying attention to that as well. Let me quickly pull that up. There we go. Got the chat up now on my phone, so I can actually see the chat. There we go. That's fine. Yeah, so I guess the only name again I was paying attention to more pre-market was the KKR. With their earnings, you had, I mean, we can go over the key things. I mean, the main thing I'm always paying attention to is really the earnings per share, which they did actually beat on. But again, that's still down 23% year on year. So I imagine that's why, you're not getting any of these massive moves. A lot of the things are still down year on year. But yeah, did beat the estimates by 2 cents. Also, just actually seeing my alert go off for Berkshire Hathaway. Obviously, they did also report their earnings this morning. Again, not a massive move off this release, 2%, but we are starting to squeeze a bit more to the upside. So we do have levels on this. So we had 355, which is kind of where we were. It's 355.10, and this is our 6-month first deviation. But again, that's kind of where we already were. So you can kind of see this actually makes sense. Acted as a resistance on the Friday. We're coming into today. Opened up, pulled back to test out as a support and have buyers sitting on that level. So if we do continue up, we do have our next resistance, and that will be at $363.25. So I guess that's the range I'm looking at today on Berkshire. So we'll start seeing how we react if we go up again. It's going to be that key resistance on the day if we continue to the upside. Obviously, if this ends up going quite far today, we do have that next level at 369. We'll plot that once or if we're able to break this key level. Okay, there we go. Again, still struggling a bit on the SPY coming into the anchored VWAP. Might actually zoom that in a tiny bit. There we go. Also just readjusted these charts slightly, so the ones that show again are going to now be a tiny bit different to how they normally look. And that's just because we now have basically 3 S&P related charts, and the reason for that is we got the SPY here. This is a 2-minute chart. I kind of just see the intraday move quite clearly. We then got the 5-minute ES chart. This is just because I want to see where the anchored VWAP is, a 2-day anchored VWAP. So we basically need both of these charts here to get both the anchored VWAPs. But then I also like the zoomed out frame like you have over on the VIX, the dollar, and the bonds. So added on a 1-hour chart, so we can start seeing a chart from here. And again, this is a 1-week anchored VWAP that you see on these charts here. So just wanted to put them on there. So it just means we basically lose our 1 chart up here. So we still have the KKR, or that chart, we still have Tupperware, and we still have Berkshire, and then this one will normally be covered by news a bit later. But yeah, so we just updated that slightly.
Food. $837 million in calendar year 2022 revenues for Sovo's brands.
29 times
They're
earnings.
paying about 14.6 times adjusted EBITDA. That's even when you include.
I think it's a very exciting deal.
Include the synergies. Of
Now,
$50
David,
million.
as an aficionado of tomatoes, particularly Italian tomatoes, where you know I grow up pretty good. Well, Carl knows my garden. It's not bad. I'm gonna be harvesting my olives this year.
Ooh,
But David,
your olives
And not
in
domestically.
Italy. Yes.
No, not domestically.
You're not
Good
able
point.
to. You're not able to export those olives.
No,
from.
I'm not. Unfortunately, but I do have a couple of bottles if you want to try it. But I will tell you, now this is very interesting. Mark Klaus, who is a fantastic CEO of Campbell's,
Yep.
went there. David, those tomatoes are from nearby. Their company's in Naples, but Pompeii. Now Pompeii, lava is lava soil.
Yes, very very rich in nutrient.
Yes,
right?
it is. That's the
Why are we
secret.
talking about this?
Because that's where they make the
Oh,
tomatoes.
that's where they get the tomatoes.
Well, you think they get it from 115th Street? No, I mean these are tomatoes. I am jealous of the
Doesn't New
soil.
Jersey have good tomatoes this time of year?
Well, that's Campbell's has it. That's where it started. But David, if you're going to pick a place, you want to be in Italy and you want to be near Pompeii because that is the holy grail of tomatoes.
Got it.
It's mostly they do Roman. They don't do beefsteak. Okay. Jersey's beefsteak.
Sovo's deal is $23 a share.
matter?
Campbell's
The
shares
Romans
are not
The
down
Romans,
too much.
the ones that don't
I'm
have a lot of
aware.
seeds.
Yes, thank you.
They don't have a lot of seeds,
I-
and that's what they use, and they're delicious.
And if you like to package your
Just seeing some news out of PayPal. So PayPal has just launched a dollar stablecoin. PayPal USD is fully backed by the US dollar deposits, short-term US treasuries, and similar cash equivalent, and can be redeemed 1-to-1 for $1. Oh yeah, for a US dollar.
Mule section, which is their
Don't
they probably
confuse it with Vertiv. This is Vertiv.
No,
much smaller.
Vertiv
completely
did a big
different.
secondary.
Vertiv
But-
is doing a 20 million share.
Don't know if that came through. Just quickly, PayPal has just launched a dollar stablecoin. Also in Tesla. So Tesla's CFO Zachary has just stepped down from his role at the company as of August 4th. Tesla has appointed a new CFO in addition to his current role as CAO. So their CAO is now becoming their CFO as well. You're also seeing now Apple's iPhone 15 event is now a plan for the 12th to or the 13th of September, with the phones expected to go on sale around the 22nd.
Goldman Sachs.
By the way, do you ever notice Goldman Sachs' stock? How it goes up a little bit every day?
No, I hadn't.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting because they are getting out of. But the big thing will be, are they going to get rid of?
Just seeing actually on the Tyson Foods, so they're one of the tickers that released pre-market. They're down about 8%. So I've just seen actually their earnings per share had quite a big miss. It came in at 15 cents compared to the estimates of 34 cents. So a massive miss on that. Revenue also slightly missed, coming in at 13.13 billion compared to the estimates of 13.8, but that is a massive earnings per share miss.
Get there.
Well, I think it's interesting because the Aramco numbers were so awful, but the Russian oil that comes through India to the West, really too bad. This is financing a war.
Yes, it is.
And nobody does anything.
Well, I'm not sure what you're supposed to do, but you know.
Well, I mean, they want helicopters and they want jets, and
Yes,
you can't beat the Russians without helicopters and jets.
Although.
So Yellow Corporation, ticker YEL, is still down 25% today. Again, just be cautious if you're buying anything like this. This is a basically bankrupt company, and that's the news that came out over the weekend. So they have just filed now for the Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. Which, I mean, we already knew they were declaring bankruptcy, but this is just new news. But yeah, I mean, justifies the sell-off. Don't know really why we're seeing this upward move, but we'll see how this reacts. If we come back into Anchor VWAP, probably something I will look to trade. Short bias, again, if the short shares we can get, I'll short those and buy the calls to define the risk. If I can't, probably just do some sort of outright put or vertical spread.
Grains.
13% of the world's calories come from Ukraine. That's going to cut back.
Yeah.
The rest of the world's pricing is going to go up. Brazil pricing is going to go up. The United States farmers could do well. But if you go by Deere and you go by Agco or CNH, they've not been great.
Caterpillar, different story, though.
Caterpillar has been amazing, and that's because they are data center, they are oil and gas, they are mining, and people keep thinking they're China. And China is less than 5% of the company.
Kind of reminds us of Tyson today, down 9. They do miss on the top and the bottom line. They do reiterate the full year sales guide,
Yeah.
which is roughly in line.
I may have to take over that company. I think I'm good at food and just run that company for a year
moving into tomatoes.
remotely.
Forget the chickens. Planting a lot of tomatoes, guys.
Chickens are hard. I've had chickens, and the darn foxes, they just take,
Catching
they rip their heads off and they don't even eat them. I mean, what the heck is that?
There's
some farmers.
Tomatoes.
No, okay, so that's the tomato blight. And I don't know how many of those are going to turn. I wish they put the real picture of the tomatoes, because I had a great yield this weekend. And Lisa and I made Jim's none better. But here, these are the ones that from the blight. I had to just, blight means you have to pull the stuff immediately. You can't even wait.
Because you can't let it spread, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Wow. Look at Farmer
Oh,
Davis.
you know me. You know, back in Queens, we had a lot of
Queens, yeah.
big garden
Acreage.
big gardening.
Yeah, Queens is
area
known
of
for
the city.
its
Known for its
produce.
soil. Very, very good
Known
soil.
for, like Pompeii?
Jim, you mentioned, well, you know, we haven't.
Well, did we hit what happened at Tyson? What the problem is, or not?
Well, the myriad problems?
I mean,
How about management?
Sales flat, GAAP operating income down 98%, but that was impacted by a number of different things. But I guess overall sales down 3% from the prior year for the third quarter didn't help. They do say that they're fully committed to their vision of delivering sustainable top-line growth and margin improvement.
Really?
Yeah.
You know, I used to talk to them all the time because I was a believer that they could turn it around. But it's just, I mean, look, this is a business where we all pay too much for everything they make, and it doesn't seem to matter. It just doesn't translate to them. How is that possible? Look at Apple. Jeez, I told you it wouldn't be up.
One thing we didn't get to, Jim, was some cyber, the debate around Fortinet last week. Today,
Right.
Guggenheim comes to their defense, although Webbush does remove Palo Alto from the best ideas.
Yeah, and that's the Fortinet effect is going to hurt Palo Alto. It's a stock that I own for my travel trust, and people aren't happy that they're going to report on Friday night. And Fortinet was upgraded today, and Wedbush pulled Palo Alto, and Dan Ives, I'm sure, I don't know if Dan's been on a couple times yet.
Today?
Yeah.
I'm
Dan fills in for me on Friday night.
Does he?
It's amazing. He's killed.
Yes.
Because he wears that yellow blazer, kind of like what he used to wear on Wide World Sports.
Dan is, yes, 2/3 of the world is covered by water, and the rest is covered by Dan Ives.
Don't you love that?
Yeah.
So Palo Alto will be down. My travel trust, we're debating buying it, but I really feel like that. Let the Fortinet effect sink in, and see what happens.
You mentioned the ad market, and we will get Disney on Wednesday, Paramount tonight.
I think Disney's going to be terrible.
But he already told us.
Well, I know, but I think the forecast is going to be bad. I think it's just bad. My trust owns it. You're supposed to say why.
Well, I've asked you that already.
I know, and I've said because I'm wrong.
You should clearly.
But I've got a long-term view. I mean, I'm like one of those people who come on TV.
You're going to need a long-term view, and Iger says you're going to need a long-term view. But I mean, he did everything he could, I think, to say how difficult things are.
There's no way you
in
can
terms
say
of the quarter that's going to be reported. And by the way, when he sat down with me, the quarter already had been completed. Now he obviously couldn't talk about it at all, but he certainly gave some sense how challenging, both for linear cable networks in terms of losing subs and the ad market, that area of the ad market.
He's a Green Bay fan, and Green Bay's as bad as this.
We did fail that anchored retest, as you can see on both the SPY and the ES.
Carl Icon's down another 8%.
KKR also coming back down to the anchored VWAP, so we'll see if we can push down. If so, looking at that as a nice support.
Yield, but it is getting a different shareholder base, maybe. I don't know.
What shareholder? Like what?
Hindenburg is
a shareholder base.
Hindenburg has won that skirmish for now.
Well, I mean, when you have that kind of strange valuation, you have a margin call. It doesn't.
No, although he was able to, he righted his capital structure to the extent that Carl Icahn by getting the banks to step in and renegotiating certain loans and things of that nature, so that he does not have a margin call.
He was so short the market. He would come on air and just say he hated the market.
Very negative.
Well, where did the market went up?
That was not a good call.
No, that was a suboptimal call the whole way.
Yes, and over time, I think when you look at the returns, they are not particularly strong, as they are not for many of the big firms and well-known managers that we talk about often.
But what do you think about Blackstone hanging in there?
Wait, what?
Blackstone.
What about
Well,
Blackstone?
their manager, Jonathan Gray. I think he's doing a good job.
Yes.
Hey, welcome from Canada. I'm guessing you're looking at the, Air Canada earnings on Friday?
They don't want anyone to make any money because they've made it's like,
but I was just talking about
it's
their
dangerous
performance over time. Blackstone is a giant. They're more than $1 trillion alternative asset manager in virtually everything.
We used to talk about this B REIT all the time. We don't talk about that anymore.
No, because things quieted.
Because exactly what Jonathan Gray said happened.
It's true.
He said it's fine, and it didn't matter. Hey, by the way, what's the best chart in the book? This is very interesting.
Carl, you want to give it a guess?
No.
I don't either.
Boston Properties. How is that possible? 5.7% yield. Stock clearly bottomed. It's just going up. They've got a lot of A-plus buildings.
They do. Earnings were well received.
Yeah. That is some.
Vornado also looks similar. Even SL Green.
They're coming back.
Many of them bottom.
They're coming back because the shorts are caught again.
There's still a lot of challenges in the office market, but as you point out, Jim, if you own A or A plus, you are in a much better position than if you have even a smattering of
Multiple
lesser.
headlines today about the DC agencies pressuring their workers to come back this fall. Zoom telling their employees come back for at least 2 days.
Wow. I mean, you never had to work at Zoom if you never had to go to Zoom.
No, Zoom. You gotta. Is Gensler gonna not be in front of the fireplace?
Wow. That'd be interesting because he's been like a Yule log. What?
Really? Is that what you play in the holidays? You play a video of Gensler by the fireplace?
I like the chairman. I like the chairman.
It's almost Christmas. Let's turn on Gensler.
I was way out of line with that.
No, but you know what else that was?
What?
It was funny.
It was funny?
Yeah, it was funny.
You know, my stepson worked at Zoom.
I know that.
Never went to Zoom. There was no reason. Because you see, it's by remote.
Yep.
As I like to say, we're the only people who show up 5 days a week in person and wear ties. That's it. Us.
Well, not
Fridays, I don't.
Yes.
I don't
Yes.
like being off Fridays. I'm gonna have to work on that. What the heck is that about? I think they want me to be off Fridays. Totally off.
We want to
off base.
pace you. We want to pace you.
Yes.
But if I'm doing all this
Like a
work anyway,
thoroughbred. Jim,
Yeah.
you can't race. You can't run
those
them
are
every day.
those are
Yeah.
fractious and unruly. You know, I once adopted a thoroughbred. You can't. You can't. They'll just throw you.
We need you to keep
You
going.
need to have
Gotta,
like
we
a
don't walk behind
retired-
you because we're worried you're going to kick us.
Yeah, we got a lot of years. We got to
need-
pace you.
Retired police horses are the best horses to adopt. Have you seen that dog that we adopted? Tony, to go with Riga?
No.
We got Riga Tony? The thing is like, he's like 40 different kinds of dog.
Beautiful dog.
Yeah.
Jim's new pup.
I'm
Yeah.
so happy to hear that, though.
We're trying to figure out what religion he is.
Has he told you?
Nah, you have to use the 23andMe.
With that, they went to the
not
bond
religion.
animation. Let's check out bonds today. We got some mixed signals and yields, but the 10-year still around 407, 2-year 477. As we got some stabilization, 5 points shy of 4,500 again. Be right back.
Okay, well that's on ad break. Then we'll run through actually the key levels for the stocks that are releasing their earnings today. So firstly, we got Palantir, which is going to be one of the key names, obviously, being quite volatile recently. From a support side, we don't actually have much support. We have this $17.18. If we hit that, then that'd be the only kind of long bias level, but we'd probably break below it if we sell off. And then our key levels aren't until about $12. So from a support side, I don't think there's much opportunity over on Palantir. However, if we do push to the upside, we then have $19.65, $20.60, $23.50, $24, and at an extreme push, you had that $27.30. But really, it means kind of the main focus will be which way do we go and how far do we move. If we go to the downside, I think we don't really have much levels to be trading. If we push to the upside, then there's definitely a lot more opportunity. The 1965, if it's only a 2-point move, if we're moving more about 3 points, and obviously we got the 20.6, and then if we get quite a strong move to the upside, we got that 23.50 to around $24 to be paying attention to. So that's Palantir. We also have, let me just make sure I'm not missing anything. Then we also have Lucid, so ticker LCID. Quickly grab the key levels on this. Kind of trading as of right around fair value as of now. So let me just put the key levels over on this stock. Quite actually far off. So again, still may not be great trading opportunities off this, but I guess we'll see how it reacts when earnings actually release. So we have that. We have that. Putting that resistance on, there's actually quite a key zone there actually, so we'll go over it in a second, but Lucid, if we actually push to the upside, could be quite a nice trading opportunity. So actually I'll put on just these just in case we did get an extended move. There we go. So for Lucid then, key levels, if we push to the downside we have $5, and if we actually go lower than that we have $3.50. So there are two supports that we have on Lucid. On the other hand, if we push to the upside, we have $8 to $8.30. This I would use more as a zone because it's so close together. Definitely a key resistance as we come into this earnings release. And if we get a bit more of a move than expected, then we have $9.50 as that next resistance over on Lucid. Then to go over to Chgg, so CHGG, isn't it? Yes. Still, I always thought it was worth a lot more. I always thought it was like an $80 stock. If I zoom out, was it? Oh, I must have been thinking, yeah, COVID-y times. I remember seeing the stock and yeah, it was, I guess that should make sense. It went up in COVID. So we have that. So we'll get the key levels on this anyway. We should be there. We then have 15.90. And then we don't actually have really supports on here. We got fair value around 550. Again, obviously we'll pull these up on the screen in a second. I'm just plotting them all on the chart. And then we actually have one support at 330, but I do think that's super unlikely that we even come close to that level. I guess as well, most of their earnings we have been selling off. But anyway, on Chegg then, support and resistances, which are key. Resistance side, we have $12, and if we broke that, we have 15.90. So that's what I'm paying attention to. Resistance standpoint, I think 12 would be the only likely outcome. If we sell off to the downside, not really anything we're likely to touch. We have 550 as fair value, so not even a trade or a level I would be trading off. More used as a target. And we have a support at 330, but again, unlikely that we're going to sell off, 6.5 points coming into this earnings release. So really on Chegg, I think the only opportunity is if we do go to the upside, and if so, $12 is that level I'd be paying attention to. So that's, we've gone through then Palantir, Lucid, Chegg, and now we'll go over to Paramount. So that's going to be the ticker PARA. This one has actually recently just been quite a nice stock in general to trade off key levels. Do that. Yeah, but this stock has been pretty nice anyway, just to trade off key levels or earning levels recently. If we show you this chart, this is when it's coming to deviation levels. So this was actually before earnings, but respected. And then this was the other earnings where you kind of got that initial bounce. Doesn't actually look like a massive bounce, but from a percentage move, I think it was like 7%. Yeah, 7, just over or under 7% off that earnings bounce. So that's basically what we'd be looking for in this one, if we could come into a key level. But again, a lot of these stocks are now kind of chilling at fair value. So from a support side, we have $13.50. So we'll put that on the chart. And if we break below that, we then have $10.50. So really quite far off on these levels. I think that could be a problem maybe coming into this week. Last week, a lot of the stocks were kind of near levels, so it made them a lot easier to trade. But it seems at least these first few tickers are nowhere really near any key levels, so that could make them quite hard to potentially get trading opportunities off. But again, we'll have to see how the week digests. We also then have that at 19.70. There we go. So then quickly over onto Paramount, key levels, again still quite far off, 1350 support, 1050 as a further off support. Resistance side, we have 1930 and 1970.
To the negative. And last week bookings had an amazing number and stock's up again. I'm looking at Expedia starting to go up. That would be key because Expedia did not have a great quarter, and here it goes. It might be a long shot, but Hertz I think could be interesting. I just think that the travel trade is being written off too early. I think people are addicted to travel because they realize life is short. A lot of people go to Europe by going to Iceland, save a lot of money, stop there.
I think I know at least one.
Yeah. But I will say that this is an important trade because if we lose this, then we don't really have, that's like the big theme right now. Still.
Yeah. We did get an upgrade of UAL out of Redbird.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know Redbird.
How about tonight then?
Okay, I have Enbridge, which is probably the most powerful force when it comes to export of oil in the whole world. Because I think that if they have a cold winter in Europe, you're going to need them. And then Xylem, this is another water theme. I'm trying to embrace the themes of what I think is really matter. Water, decarbonization. These are the things I care about. I don't know what you care about. It's what I care about.
I just like hearing you say water.
Well, I'm from Philadelphia.
I know.
Boy, Philadelphia did well with it, with NVIDIA.
Jim, we'll see you tonight. Good to have you back. Mad Money, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Dow's up 245. Take a quick break. Don't go anywhere.
So then the last ticker we're watching for today is going to be the Beyond Meat, so ticker BYND. So key levels on this coming into the earnings. From a support side, we have $11.90 and $9.60. That's what I'm paying attention to from a support side. Still quite a bit. Well, quite a big move. That would still be a 18% sell-off, but definitely possible. And if we go to the upside, which is obviously going to be the easier target to hit, we would only need to go up about 10%, and that would be 1640 to around 1670. First deviation between the 6-month and the 1 year. So quite a strong layer of resistance if we can get all the way to there. And a further resistance would be 1865, but that would be quite unlikely to really kind of say the least. So those are the earning ones. Again, we'll have a video on that later, so you can kind of, we'll go through them a bit more detailed, but that's kind of the key things we're paying attention to level wise. Again, still paying attention to this yellow corporation. They did confirm today they filed for that Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection, so we'll start seeing how we start to react here. Still kind of near these key levels, which actually would have slightly adjusted, so we can update these levels today. Because again, when a stock's very volatile, like in this case, the levels will just adjust quite quickly, or at least the 6-month levels will adjust quite quickly. We have just as well hit 10 a.m. So put that there, and then we have 187. So these are the updated levels for Yellow Corporation. Again, these are all based off just standard deviation channels. And we can actually see they're being respected quite nice today. So if we can start breaking these resistance at 270, 350 would be that target. And I think this range I'm liking quite in general, just kind of that 355 to 390. You've also got the anchored re-up in that range. I think I would probably be looking to trade those short buys with some outright puts or vertical spreads. And if we break the low, then obviously we have that next support at 187 as that key support over on Yellow Corporation or Yellow Corporation. Also seeing Fubo down about 10% today. Our closest support is around 256, so still requires a bit of a sell-off. This VTG stock is actually quite crazy. Let me just quickly... Okay, that's how I want it. There we go. And then I want this chart like that. Okay, yeah, so this VTGN stock has actually been quite crazy. I was assuming it was some sort of reverse stock split. They did have one recently. That was back in June time. But yeah, this stock, $1.87 up to $60 in pre-market, already back down to 12, but a big crazy mover.
To the New York Stock Exchange, Sarah has the morning off ahead of a big exclusive later in the week. The CEO of X, formerly known as Twitter, Linda Yaccarino. A lot to talk about, from the rebranding to advertising and the future of the platform. Turning to the markets, though, big week for inflation data later in the week and some last rounds of corporate results on the June calendar quarter. Market is looking past this decline in Apple today, which is the worst performing day.
Yeah, but we are 30 minutes into the trading session. Here are three big movers we're watching today. Tyson Foods, one of the biggest laggards on the S&P this morning, posting a loss for the quarter and announcing plans to close 4 more of its chicken processing plants. Shares down double digits on the year, down about 8% currently. Lucid shares under pressure as well. The luxury EV maker slashing prices of its sedan by as much as $12,000 amid growing competition. The news comes ahead of Lucid's earnings after the bell today, and in anticipation of that, shares down nearly 5% right now. And Berkshire Hathaway headed higher after results this weekend. The company's cash pile approaching nearly $150 billion after a boost in operating earnings thanks to a jump in Berkshire's insurance underwriting and investment income. Shares of Berkshire Hathaway up 2.7%. And guys, it's Monday, which means perhaps they're buying another $10 billion in short-dated treasuries.
When I saw auctions on the calendar today, I was like, it is Monday.
It is a Monday.
Mondays are important to at least the team at Berkshire, according to Warren's comments to Becky last week.
Yeah, I think they held something like $97 billion worth of treasuries at this point. So, you know, maybe it surpasses $100 billion after today.
And as for so many others, the interest is actually meaningful now, as opposed to a couple of years ago where it really didn't do much at all to the income statement. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes we forget. I mean, a $766 billion market value for Berkshire. So one of the largest companies in the world.
Yeah, Saudi Aramco, too. Another one of the largest companies in the world.
Yes.
Reporting. I think Fortune pegged them as the second largest company in the world after Walmart based on revenue. But of course, they saw a big profit decline on lower oil prices, which that company is still, you know, obviously very tied, very correlated to what happens with oil. So 40% decline in profit in the second quarter.
And the largest company in the world continues to be Apple, despite it is losing a bit of value. And of course, we should point out that Berkshire is the largest single holder with 177, maybe a little less now, $1 billion worth of stock.
And those
still percentage-wise, very small percentage of overall, given it's more than a $3 trillion market value, but it's not insignificant for Berkshire.
Yeah, their unrealized gains certainly helped them in the quarter. But on the energy side, that was, you know, a deterrent for them, unrealized losses, and they did pare back some of their Chevron holdings as a result of that. And guys, if you can believe it, we get 13 Fs.
Wow,
start
again
on
already?
a week from today.
Christmas
but we
in
could
August.
see some trickle through on Friday, but probably Berkshire Hathaway's will be Monday. They usually tend to file after the close on the deadline day. So just something to look forward to next Monday already on that front.
Yeah. Meantime, some of the bears feeling their oats lately, looking at some potential drawdown targets. CFRA today says, Sam Stovall, maybe 5 to 12 down, as there's some consolidation perhaps at bay. I think it was Jeff DeGraff on Friday from Renaissance looking at 4,300. So we'll see how much of a stand we can make given the lack of earnings that are going to draw down here pretty quickly after this week.
Yeah, I think we're up to 85% of the way through the S&P 500 in terms of earnings, 80% beat rate, which is higher than the 5-year average of 77%. So a pretty decent earnings season, although, of course, earnings were revised down lower, pretty significantly before this earnings season. And so I think the question now, as people look ahead to what's happening in Q3, is the potential for additional contraction? Have we seen kind of the bottom of that? Is the worst behind us as we move ahead? And a lot of debate in the notes this morning on that front.
Yep.
Yeah, speaking of macroeconomics, of course, we have gotten a host of Fed speak, and we're working through that this morning on the heels of Friday's weaker than expected jobs report. The man who does that work for us is Steve Leisman, and he joins us now to try and tell us exactly what's going on here. Steve.
Yeah, good morning, David. Fed Governor Michelle Bowman speaking this morning, saying she expects additional increases, saying they're likely needed to lower inflation. She says monetary policy is not a preset course, so she is going to monitor data. But here's her test for saying if we've got enough. She says looking for evidence inflation is, quote, on a consistent and meaningful downward path. She added that the labor market remains tight with demand for workers outstripping supply. Her comments were also made, by the way, by New York Fed President John Williams, released this morning, and echoing concerns that, hey, that Friday jobs report may not have been as hawkish, or may have been more hawkish than the market first thought. Among the concerns inside that report, job growth has been consistently greater than population growth, and that's reflected, by the way, in the still strong wage gains that are out there. The unemployment rate ticked down, and even slowing payroll growth is seen by some as a result of there being not enough bodies to hire rather than an unwillingness to hire. Chris Rupke writing, this could be the first time in economic history that payroll employment drops, which normally indicates a recession, but the reason will be there's no one in the country left to hire. The problem could be revised away in January. The government will re-estimate population growth. You can see in that chart there, the last 2 years, the problem was solved with the addition of 1 million people in each of the past 2 Januaries when they do that exercise. Government's also going to revise job growth, likely down. That number comes out in August. For now, Fed officials have to puzzle with this problem that there are more jobs than there appear to be people, and that's going to keep further rate hikes potentially on the table for some officials, guys.
I mean, we talk so often, Steve, about this broader issue of immigration and how that would be helpful potentially. Is that still bandied about as a potential solution to one of the problems you just raised?
It is bandied about as probably the #1 solution, David, because as far as I know, we are incapable. We don't have the science for a woman to give birth to a person in 25 years or older so that they could go to work and be part of the primates work group. So, yes, we could do more in the way of fertility, but that is not obviously for economists to say. For sure, what they could do is in the way of immigration. Those are actual people that would come in. And if you bring people in and you train them and you make them efficient workers, then you also increase your average productivity in your country, which those are both good things.
Yeah. And the data lately has been a little encouraging. It's good to see. Steve, thanks. Talking a bit, Steve Leisman. Let's discuss the latest Fed headlines and what it might mean for markets and the economy. Joining us today, Wells Fargo Securities Head of Equity Strategy, Chris Harvey, and UBS Chief U.S. Economist, Jonathan Pingle. Guys, it's great to see you both. Jonathan, we got Manheim under our belt this morning, and I'm wondering if you're, or how you're thinking about CPI going into Thursday.
Oh, I mean, we think the Fed's going to get another kind of piece of good news on the inflation front on Thursday. Our expectation is that the core is going to rise 0.19%. So another rounded 0.2. And look like things are cooling. A little bit of a different mix of the components, but I think that the Fed officials are generally going to welcome that. It's going to help indicate that the June improvement was not a one-off. I mean, there are always reasons to caveat the data because it's noisy, but I do think this is going to fuel the soft landing narrative and be welcomed by FOMC officials.
Yeah. Chris, I'd like you to respond to that, sort of fold in what we've seen happen to commodities off of some of these one-year lows and how that affects your year-end target analysis.
So, Carl, I think that's right. I don't think we're going to get much from CPI. I don't think it's really going to change the equation. I think the big thing right now is what the Treasury did last week and the amount of issuance, the surprise issuance that they put to the market. And that's really roiled the rates market. We have the 10-year above 4%. We had it making a beeline to 4.25%, which was the cycle high. And I think that's the real story at this point in time. And until we see rates kind of calm down here, things could be a little bit touch and go. Nothing terrible, but you're going to have a lot more volatility because your all-in yields I'm not sure they're attractive enough to bring in those buyers.
Chris, just to be clear, is that volatility in the rates market in particular, or just the overall effect that it's had on equities? And do you expect to see more of an effect on equities in the weeks to come?
So, Leslie, there's been a fair amount of volatility in the rate market. I think that will continue. But really what I was focusing on was the volatility in the equity market. We haven't seen a ton of it. As we all know, it's late in the summertime. Earnings season is more or less over, or mainly over, and the macro begins to take over. So we could see volatility really start to ratchet up a little bit higher. And so don't expect, until you see rates begin to calm down, I don't think volatility in the equity market is going to calm down just yet.
Hey, Jonathan, going into the summer, a lot of equity strategists were trying to draw our attention to external events that might affect the market. At the time, it was debt ceiling. But I wonder if you're thinking about UAW strikes, overall fiscal tightening, government shutdown. That's getting mentioned a bit this week.
Yeah, I mean, Carl, we think about all of that, obviously, right? Given the spread between what's coming out of the Senate and the House, odds of a government shutdown are rising. We do think that the resumption of student loan repayments will be a meaningful headwind for a wide range of households. And we are expecting the recent debt ceiling agreement to at least limit the expansion of federal government spending over the course of the next year. So, there are some headwinds coming up as we roll through the end of the year that could be pretty meaningful. We'll also have to see whether or not the slowing we're seeing in the labor market.
SPY is currently retesting that anchored VWAP, so see if we hold that. If not, if we break through, then be watching the ES futures. We got the $4,525 anchored VWAP there, so that would be the other resistance
as well. But we're certainly not out of the woods on some of the external influences on the U.S. economy. And the global backdrop has not looked particularly great lately.
Chris, what's your take on the risks? Morgan Stanley's Mike Wilson out kind of famously saying that the high fiscal spending that underpinned much of the economic growth this year is unsustainable. He basically had that, he'd missed that as part of his forecast for the year, part of the bearishness that he's had, but he does believe that ultimately it will kind of surface and it could be a bad sign for stocks. Do you agree with that?
So, Leslie, what I would tell you, and there was a lot of talk about the Fitch downgrade last week, and if you look at 2011, you look at today, the macro is much, much stronger today than it was in 2011. It's much stronger than it's been in some time. If you look at credit spreads, and the two major factors you want to look at, they're credit spreads and their claims. Credit spreads hit a year-to-date tight at the end of last month, and that's an incredibly powerful signal. The second thing is we've been talking about claims going higher for some time. They're still anemic. Until we see those two factors start to ratchet up, you really can't say there's a whole lot of stress in the economic picture. So, yeah, there's lots of risk. And we think the risk is actually, it's interesting. The risk could be that inflation comes back later on because we are seeing confidence come back, because we are seeing net worth going higher, because the consumer is stronger than expected. Right now, it looks like the Fed is done. But if the consumer starts to reaccelerate, that could pull back in the Fed, and that is one of the bigger risks. But right now, the macro is still incredibly strong, and keep an eye on credit spreads, keep an eye on claims. Those are your two major triggers.
Yeah. Hey, finally, Chris, I was looking back at some of your notes from the summer. In June, you did say, we fear the Fed's rate pause will allow UberCap AI to go next level if 99 and 2000 are any guide. Do you think that's possibly, I mean, could we replicate that in the either 4Q or going into next year?
Pearl, I think that's a big risk. I think the probability of irrational exuberance goes higher. I think it went much higher after that CPI print and after the market believes the Fed is done. Because one of our big issues, what was going to stand in the way of things going next level was the Fed, and the Fed being more hawkish, right, or potentially being more hawkish and weighing on the economy, weighing on risk product, and so on and so forth. That does not look like it's going to happen. And if you think about as we turn the calendar, right, we go into September, what happens? The calendar gets more exciting. You know, there'll be a lot more activity, but we also go into conference season, and conference season could stir up a lot of optimism and some risk taking, and we could see some funny business in the back half of the year.
Funny business. I like that. Chris, Jonathan, talk soon, guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
As we go to break, let's get a roadmap for the rest of the hour. Warren Buffett, as we said, trimming his energy exposure this quarter. Should you? We'll break down the street's top picks after the break.
Plus, Apple is coming off what was its worst week, that is the stock, for the year. We'll have more with one analyst who just downgraded the name and says there is a U.S. slowdown ahead.
And PayPal taking a big step into crypto, what it means for the company and investors. A big show still ahead. Stay with us.